If it's Friday, campaign contrasts. Vice President Harris lays out her economic policy and lays into former President Trump's plan, one day after Trump blamed Harris for rising costs while keeping up his personal attacks. Plus, what will be the key issues that decide this election? We've got the answer on what matters most to young voters in critical swing states and what's driving them to the polls. And pressing the panic button, literally, the latest efforts to secure not just the election, but election workers amid rising threats and safety concerns for polling places. Welcome to Meet the Press Now. I'm Kristen Welker. Vice President Harris today made her first major policy-focused speech as a presidential candidate, speaking in battleground North Carolina just days before the Democratic National Convention gets underway. Referencing her own middle-class upbringing, Harris laid out her broad economic plan as she seeks to define herself and her candidacy, tackling one of her biggest vulnerabilities, the economy. Voters say it's their most important issue heading into November, and it's one where President Biden was getting low marks. Harris's economic agenda includes proposals to give down payment assistance to first-time homebuyers, a federal ban on price gouging in the food industry, and tax cuts for families with young children. She touted those plans today while attacking former President Trump for his economic proposals.
When I am elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans. As president, I will take on the high costs that matter most to most Americans, like the cost of food. Now compare what Donald Trump plans to do. He wants to impose what is, in effect, a national sales tax on everyday products and basic necessities that we import from other countries. That will devastate Americans. It will mean higher prices on just about every one of your daily needs. At this moment, when everyday prices are too high, he will make them even higher.
But despite the polling bump Harris has seen since becoming the top of the ticket, she still trails former President Trump when it comes to the economy. In the latest poll from CNBC, 40% of voters say they would be better off financially under Trump, while only 21% say the same of Harris. And on broader questions of who's better on the economy, Trump holds a 6-point advantage nationally and a 5-point advantage in 7 key battleground states. The Harris economic plan rollout comes a day after former President Trump slammed Harris and the Biden administration for the Inflation Reduction Act, standing in front of a table full of props meant to draw attention to inflation and high food costs.
Their Inflation Reduction Act, by the way, was a disaster. It's what caused the inflation. Their Inflation Reduction Act was a con job. Here is the record of economic calamity that Kamala is desperate for voters to ignore. She cast a tie-breaking votes that caused record inflation, no tax on tips. All of a sudden, out of the blue, she comes out. That was months ago I said that.
And of course, a number of factors caused inflation, according to economists. But the former president also veered into other topics, including defending his right to make personal attacks on the vice president. Even his allies have urged him to stay on message.
I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence. And I think she'll be a terrible president. And I think it's very important that we win. And whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. She's weird in her policy. Who wouldn't want to have strong borders? Who doesn't want to have lower taxes?
Joining me now from Raleigh, North Carolina is NBC's Yamiche Alcindor. And also with me is Brian Chung to break down the impact of some of these policies that Kamala Harris talked about today. Dasha Burns also has the view from Trump world. Yamiche, I have to start with you. So today the vice president rolled out her economic plan. It comes after she and President Biden were out talking health care costs yesterday. Obviously, a clear focus on the economy. How much is the Harris campaign actually trying to distance itself from any negative perceptions of the Biden administration?
Well, it's a key question, Kristen, and I know there's going to be some background noise behind me because I'm here at Wake Tech. It's the largest community college in North Carolina. She was just here, but now they're packing up because she's left and is on her way back to D.C. But what you heard from the vice president here is someone who's trying to lean into the idea that she wants to build, not really distance herself from the Biden administration, of course, the Biden-Harris administration's policies. So a number of the things that she's proposing, policy stances that she's getting into detail on, are building on some of the things that President Biden has been doing, including things like capping insulin at $35 for out-of-pocket expenses, as well as even also cutting middle-class tax, putting tax cuts for middle-class families. Also providing sort of help to renters and first-time home buyers. So a lot of the things that she was talking about are things that President Biden has wanted to champion. But it's interesting because this policy speech was also a personal speech. She, of course, laid out those details that I just shared, but she also talked about her upbringing. She said her mom saved for more than a decade to buy her first home. And she said, I remember as a teenager seeing the excitement in my mother's eyes, and I understood the importance and power of homeownership. She also talked about working at McDonald's as a young woman and saying that she was sort of working at the fast food chain to earn extra money, but she saw other people who were supporting their whole families on that McDonald's salary, that McDonald's fund. So she was really talking about the fact that she wants to make the middle class a center of her campaign. She said building the middle class will be really a principle that she will try to build her presidency on if she is elected. And she also talked about creating what she called a, quote, opportunity economy, really saying that every American should have access to living wages and no child should grow up in poverty. So a lot of details, but also some personal real reflections on that part. And of course, as you said, she also attacked former President Trump, saying that he's looking out for the rich while she's looking out for the middle class, Kristen.
Yeah, and the economy undoubtedly where this battle will be fought. Yamiche, let me ask you about the backdrop, the fact that she was there in North Carolina. Trump was there earlier this week. This is a state that was initially out of reach. At least that's how Democrats viewed it when President Biden was at the top of the ticket. Now it looks a whole lot more competitive. What are you hearing about the strategy to potentially try to win this state?
Well, Harris allies and campaign officials absolutely feel bullish about North Carolina, as they do about other states like Georgia. They're really trying to pour as many resources as they can into this state. She's really going to try to lean in on Southern black voters in this state, but also really talking about the middle class and trying to build on this economic message, trying to peel away some voters who maybe liked former President Trump on the economy, but maybe don't like the rhetoric and the personal attacks that he's now been continuing to make on her. So she's really trying, I think, to appeal to the broader sort of independent voters here in this state, along with, of course, the base voters. They're going to try as best they can to get people motivated to turn out. And, of course, the energy that we've been seeing pulsing through the Democratic Party for the last few weeks, I also saw that here. People were clapping. She was on the rope line, hugging and taking selfies for a long time here. So people definitely much excited to see her here in North Carolina.
Well, Yamiche Alcindor there to cover all of it on the road with Vice President Kamala Harris. Yamiche, thank you so much. Let me turn now to Brian Chung. Brian, we, of course, as Yamiche just laid out, heard the vice president today pitch a number of policies on everything from housing to lowering taxes, tax credits for families who have children, and then trying to ban price gouging on groceries. What is the reality check here? How much of this is something that she can actually carry out within her first several days of office?
Yeah, well, I mean, she's going to need help from Congress to do a lot of these things, namely with those child tax credits and also with the funding to try to build some of those homes. Now, I actually want to zone in on the housing bit because, again, from a zoomed out perspective, really what this is all about is overall inflation. And we got an inflation report earlier this week that showed that 90% of the inflation that we saw in the month of July was attributed to housing costs. So this is really the biggest piece of the puzzle here in trying to get inflation down. So she wants to, well, give that $25,000 to first-time home buyers to make it easier to cover that down payment. That's good on the demand side of things. But guess what? It's not really going to do you any good if you have that $25,000 incentive if there aren't any homes in your neighborhood to buy up. That's why she's focusing on the supply side of things by trying to build up 3 million homes over the course of this plan if she is elected. And she's going to do that by doing a $40 billion innovation fund to try to spur creative ways to build houses, in addition to offer tax incentives to home buyers that are going to prioritize starter homes for first-time buyers. Now, this is going to be such an important part of the equation here, Kristen, because, again, You can only make home prices go down if you can make the supply and demand equation of both sides work out. All right, great if you give that $25,000 incentive. It's going to take years to build those homes and get the supply up there. Even with 3 million homes, there are some estimates out there, Kristen, that the shortfall in this country of how many homes we need to get back to equilibrium, somewhere between 4 to 7 million. So there's going to be a lot of open questions there.
And let me drill down with you, if I can, Brian, on the inflation numbers. Obviously, they hit a 3-year low. As you're talking about, what is the significance of that, and what's the reality check in turn? I mean, obviously, prices are still high at the grocery store, and that's part of the issue. And we're looking at a potential interest rate cut by the Fed next time it meets.
Yeah, well, I mean, the language around this is a little bit confusing because you hear inflation is down. Yes, the rate of inflation is down. It was somewhere around 9% in the summer of 2022. It's come down to 2.9% as of the last reading that we got earlier this week, which covers the month of July. But it's still a positive number. We're talking about plus 2.9%, which means that prices are still going up. They're just going up at a slower rate than they were compared to this time last year, compared to especially the year prior. So the real big story here is that inflation is getting a little bit closer to what economists say is a healthy level, which is 2%. We're still above that, but that might be the green light for the Federal Reserve, which over on their side of things, they've been keeping those interest rates high. That's the reason why your mortgage rates and your credit card rates are so high. Well, now we're hearing from the Fed that, okay, well, with inflation getting a little bit closer to their 2% target, maybe they can cut interest rates, but they don't have their next meeting until September 18th. So for those that are kind of holding their breath, hoping they can see cheaper borrowing costs, that might not happen until next month, Kristen.
Well, it's an issue that voters are tracking so closely, the top issue still for so many voters all across this country. Brian Chung, thank you so much for breaking down the complicated details for us. Really appreciate it. Let me turn now to Dasha Burns. She's covering all things Trump campaign. So, Dasha, look, if you look at the polling, most of the polls show that former President Trump still has an advantage on the issue of the economy. Does the campaign feel as though he's doing a good enough job of staying on message? He had that big event yesterday that was centered around the economy. He did start off on the economy, but he quickly veered into personal attacks against Vice President Harris.
Well, look, it's a good question. And, you know, his allies have been on the airwaves and behind the scenes trying to convince him to focus on the issues, focus on the policy, and really contrast what he did in his administration versus this administration to try to tie Harris to President Biden. Because Harris has started to make up the gap on the economic polling a little bit, Kristen. But for Biden, that gap was wider. And so the goal for the folks in Trump's orbit is tie the two of them together. And that will make it an easier argument for the former president. But even standing in front of those boxes of groceries yesterday, Kristen, he had a hard time driving that message and sticking to that message. He was asked about the advice to go policy over personal attacks. And he said to reporters, I feel like I'm entitled to those personal attacks. He feels like he has to do this his way. And you know as well as I do, when you talk to people in his orbit, to his advisors, they know they can't control him. They can show him the data, they can show him the advice, but Trump is going to be Trump, and that's in part the tough balance that his team has to walk. They say Trump is our secret sauce, an advisor told me. And that means who he is the reason that he's become this notorious, unique figure in politics, but it comes with that double-edged sword of he'll go on the attack in ways that might turn off some voters, Kristen.
Yeah, you know, we just are getting this new reporting as we are all preparing to cover the DNC next week. The Trump campaign saying he's going to be out in battleground states. Yeah. He's going to be counter-programming that event. What do you know about what we can anticipate seeing next week? Any sense that he'll be staying on message then?
You know, I don't think anyone has an answer to that except maybe former President Trump himself. And even then, he sometimes doesn't know exactly what he's going to do until he gets up there behind the podium, Kristen. But look, I think, you know, he's received some of the criticism from the Harris campaign of not being out on the trail enough. Vance has been doing a lot of the stumping recently. He did have an event in Asheville, North Carolina this week, and will be in Pennsylvania this weekend. But next week, he is planning to counter program. He will be in those battlegrounds battleground states. And you saw this a little bit from him in the primary, Kristen, where he was getting criticized for not spending enough time in Iowa and some of those early primary states. But then in that last few moments, those last few weeks where voters are really, really paying attention, it was nose to the grindstone. So it's possible and likely from what I'm hearing behind the scenes that it's going to be a similar strategy here where post-Labor Day, when people are fully locked in, that's when you're going to really see him deploy. And next week, we will be seeing that counter-programming.
All right. Tasha Burns, thank you as always for your fantastic reporting. Really appreciate it. Good to see you. Coming up, the countdown is on to the Democratic National Convention, where some of the biggest names in the Democratic Party and thousands of protesters are set to converge. The head of the Democratic National Committee joins me next. Plus, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is heading to Israel to keep trying to make a breakthrough on a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. We'll have the very latest on the negotiations. Stay with us. You're watching Meet the Press now. Welcome back. We are just 3 days away from the start of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. The stage is literally set at the United Center for Monday's kickoff, where Democrats are hoping to use the week to both introduce and define the Harris-Walz ticket. But at the same time, NBC News has learned Monday night will be something of a tribute for the outgoing president, celebrating his accomplishments and noting his legacy, with President Biden as the headline speaker. And First Lady Jill Biden will also be prominently featured as part of that tribute. Joining me now is the chairman of the Democratic Party, Jaime Harrison. Chairman Harrison, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this is extraordinary because you have had a short 4 weeks to replan your entire convention. How can voters and viewers expect that the scope and the tenor has changed since Vice President Harris took over the top of the ticket?
Well, you know, it's just an exciting time for us in the Democratic Party, and particularly for those of us who've been working on this convention for the last 3.5 years. The great part is that a lot of our convention was already going to focus on Kamala Harris and to tell her story. Because as you can remember, in 2020, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't get the regular pomp and circumstance you get at a normal convention because of COVID. And so what we were able to do here as we switched the top of our ticket was to make sure that we continue to tell that story, that we are celebrating Joe Biden and the accomplishments of his administration. And now we're adding another new face as well in terms of Governor Tim Walz to really focus on him and to tell his story to the American people for the first time. So it's really exciting. It is, you know, we are so fortunate on the Democratic side to have such a deep bench and so many all-stars. You know, Kristen, I'm a Marvel fan, and I've been joking that the Avengers will be assembling next week right here in Chicago.
Well, you know, it's interesting because not everyone is assembling. In fact, some Democratic senators who are facing tough re-election battles are opting out. Of course, I am thinking of Sherrod Brown, John Tester, Jackie Rosen. Do you worry that that will undercut the image of party unity?
No, not at all. I mean, listen, if anybody should worry, it's the fact that the Republicans should worry. The only person that was on that stage that had any semblance of anything, you know, Donald Trump was a former president. But where was his vice president the previous 4 years? Where was President Bush? None of those folks were there, but look at who is on our stage. You're going to have our former presidents in terms of Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. You're going to have nominees, former nominees, Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is going to be, again, all of the Avengers assembling. You know, I ran for the Senate a few years ago, and I understand that if you're in a tough race, yeah, there aren't any voters in where the convention's going to be. You got to go and stay home and talk to the people who are actually going to cast a ballot for you. And so, yes, it's great to be on that stage. It's great to attend the parties. But at the end of the day, if you're focused on your reelection, you need to be where your voters are, and that's back home.
And, of course, we know that organizers are bracing for potentially between 30,000 to 40,000 protesters, about half a mile potentially from the arena. Is Chicago prepared for that? Any concerns about that split screen?
Oh, Chicago's prepared for it, similar to the way that Milwaukee was prepared for the protesters at the RNC. You know, I have great faith in terms of the Chicago Police Department, the Secret Service, and all of the local law enforcement. They've been working tirelessly, mapping this the convention out for both the RNC and the DNC for well over a year now. And so, you know, we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in people's opportunity to have their voices be heard. But at the same time, safety is the real key for all of these things. Giving people an opportunity to express their will, but at the same time to make sure that it is safe and sound for not only the protesters, but also to the delegates and all those attending the convention.
Well, you know, the head of one of the uncommitted Democratic groups told us earlier this week that they had asked for speaking time at the convention. What say you? Will they get that speaking time, Chairman Harrison?
No. Well, everybody wants speaking time at the convention. I just had one of my local officials from my hometown asking if they could speak at the convention. I wish we could give everybody that opportunity, but, you know, it's a short period of time and we can't. In essence, we're going to have a diverse viewpoints all across this convention. We are a very diverse party. The Democratic Party looks like America, and you will see that diversity on the stage over the course of the next few days.
But just to be clear, that was a no. You told them no?
Oh, I haven't told them anything, but
they won't be speaking at the convention? We shouldn't anticipate hearing from them at the convention? Yeah,
that's not my decision. You know, we're working in coordination with our convention chair and the team that we have set up. And at this point, I'm not certain that they were given any speaking time. Again, we get a lot of requests from a lot of folks.
All right. Well, let's talk about what we might hear from Vice President Kamala Harris, because a lot of questions about how much detail she's going to be giving about her policies today. Of course, she did announce some of her economic policies. We're going to get to them in just a second. But I wanted your take on whether you think she should be filling in the blanks. This is something that Congresswoman Annie Kuster told Politico about the Harris campaign. She said Harris doesn't need to negotiate against herself. We've got the biggest possible tent right now. I don't think there's a real strong reason for her to try to weed out any points of view right now. Do you agree with her on that?
Well, listen, what I know is the vice president has brought the Democratic Party together in the most unified fashion that I've seen in a very, very long time. Her campaign has brought so much energy and enthusiasm. That hope and joy is infectious. I was so fortunate to kick off the rally in Philadelphia and the rally in Detroit. And, you know, I worked during the 2008 campaign, and I thought that I would never see a campaign that could top the enthusiasm and joy that the Obama campaign brought. Well, you know, the vice president said, hold my beer, because she is topping that. And she's bringing this party together. And you're going to see that energy and enthusiasm on the stage. And you're going to hear more about what her vision is for America, what she wants to accomplish over the course of the next 4 years. Yeah. She rolled out today some of her economic plans, and she will continue to do that. I know that many of us can't realize that, you know, we're only about 3 weeks into her being the official nominee of this party. And so it's a very small window, but she's rolling things out and bringing a whole lot of enthusiasm and energy with her.
Let me just ask you about one of the policies that she proposed today. It got a lot of attention. She vowed to crack down on price gouging on groceries. I want to read you what Catherine Rampell wrote in the Washington Post. She wrote, "It's hard to exaggerate how bad this policy is. It is, in all but name, a sweeping set of government-enforced price controls across every industry. Not only food, supply and demand would no longer determine prices or profit levels. Far-off Washington bureaucrats would. The FTC would be able to tell, say, a Kroger in Ohio the acceptable price it can charge for milk." What do you say to those who call this proposal government-enforced price controls?
Well, I mean, I think people need to just relax. You know, in the end of the day, we see that sometimes some of these corporations are taking unfair advantages over various disasters, COVID or hurricanes or what have you. I mean, in many states, you know, I live in a hurricane state, South Carolina, and I know that there are points in time in which the government says no price gouging for these gas stations and others who are trying to pass astronomical prices on to consumers when they don't have to, because they're trying to take advantage of an emergency.
Donald Trump, chairman, says this is essentially communism. How do you respond to that?
Oh, well, Donald Trump's best friends with Putin. I mean, talking about communism, I mean, what Donald Trump says is senseless. I mean, I don't put much merit into it. I don't even know if he understands even basic economic policy. So whatever a quote from Donald Trump doesn't really carry much weight with me, and I don't think it carries much with the American people.
All right, Jaime Harrison, thank you so much for your time today. We will see you in Chicago, sir. Really appreciate your joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.
You too, and tune in Monday and every day of the DNC next week for live coverage of the convention right here on NBC News Now. I will kick it off each day with a special edition of Meet the Press Now, live from Chicago at 4 p.m. Eastern. And do stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Most recent national and battleground polls show a tight race between Vice President Harris and former President Trump. But the vice president's entry into the race has led to a widening gender gap between the two candidates, including a 22-point gap in a new Fox News poll. Harris has a 10-point advantage among women. Trump has a 12-point advantage among men. For more, I'm joined by my great Friday panel: Molly Ball, senior political correspondent for the Wall Street Journal; Eugene Robinson, Washington Post columnist and an NBC News political analyst; and Michael Dubke, former White House communications director under former President Trump. He's also a founding partner of the PR firm BlackRock Group. Thanks to all of you for being here on this Friday. Molly, let me start with you. Let's put up these poll numbers again. We talk about the gender gap. This time, obviously, in the post-Dobbs era, we have a female at the top of the ticket. What do you make of this moment? How significant could this gap be?
It's potentially determinative. I mean, one thing that's fascinating to remember is we have had a female presidential nominee before, and the gender gap didn't really budge. The gender gap in 2016, when Hillary Clinton was the nominee, was exactly the same as it had been in 2012 with two men running. But it was after Hillary Clinton lost that election. You had the Women's March, you had the Me Too movement, and then, of course, fast forwarding to 2022, you have the Dobbs decision. All of these factors have really supercharged women's polarization, basically, the polarization based on gender. And it goes both ways, as you pointed out in that graphic. You have women being sorted into the Democratic Party and men being sorted into the Republican Party. And I think we saw with that, you know, the Hulk Hogan display at the RNC, that Trump is really making a play for that macho vote as a countervailing force to the women's vote that's swinging in the other direction.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, Trump has proudly said that he has a lead among white male voters, among male voters.
And he's kept it. He's kept it even with the transition. So you see all this enthusiasm that's built up over the last 26 days of the Harris presidential campaign, and you do see a growing gap among women. What was interesting to me is that the gap with men has stayed static during that whole period of time. So all of this enthusiasm hasn't translated over to that sector yet.
Eugene, let me get your take on where you think this disparity in the women vote might be going. And one of the factors, of course, is J.D. Vance. We keep getting these kind of unearthed comments from him. I want to play some more. This is from 2021, these comments about abortion. They surfaced this week. He's referencing he's talking about comments that Stacey Abrams made. I want to play them and get your reaction on the other side.
When the big corporations come against you for passing abortion restrictions, when corporations are so desperate for cheap labor that they don't want people to parent children, she's right to say that abortion restrictions are bad for business. And what that means for those of us who want to protect the dignity of the unborn is that we should be for abortion restrictions, even if they are bad for business.
How do you think those types of comments impact the gender gap, Eugene?
I don't think they come across well to many women. I really don't. I mean, I think Donald Trump and J.D. Vance seem to be going out of their way to offend women. They seem to have done that over time. J.D. Vance there are the receipts, you know, there's just clip after clip. And this idea that a woman is basically a vessel. That's it. A vessel for society, or a vessel for something other than her own agency, is there. They're putting it out there, and I find it offensive. I think a lot of women find it offensive, too.
Mike, do you think that there's concern within the Trump campaign about these comments that keep surfacing by J.D. Vance?
Well, I'm sure that there's some concern that you got to go back to the vet and figure out what went right and what went wrong with that. I think, though, going back to your point on this particular issue, for Republicans, with the Dobbs decision, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade and sending it back to the states, Republicans haven't figured out how to message that yet. Youngkin tried in Virginia in the off year, didn't really succeed. Didn't really work. And what they're trying to do is expose where Democrats are going too far. That hasn't really worked yet. So I think this issue, especially in Nevada and Arizona, is going to come out to play in the presidential election. Republicans haven't found their footing yet on this.
Yeah, I mean,
well, the problem is, though, that Roe v. Wade was right in that it said there was a privacy right there, and that women had, and that seems to me to be what most women believe, even if it's not phrased in the context of Roe v. Wade. I mean, that's
what it became, and we also had 40 years where it didn't change. So everyone felt, the debate on that, the enthusiasm for that was on the Republican side trying to overturn. Now it's
exactly
flipped.
Now it's completely switched.
It's totally switched.
Well, and one place we're going to hear a lot about this issue, Molly, is the Democratic National Convention next week. There's no doubt about that. I want to ask you about what you are anticipating, because today Vice President Harris laid out some of her policy positions on the economy. There's a big debate within the Democratic Party about whether she should be adding too many details. There are only about 3 months left. Is she not running a riskier campaign by starting to put some meat on the bones?
I think that's potentially true because every time she advances a specific proposal, she's putting herself on one or the other side of some of these divides within the Democratic Party. And I think most of the proposals that she put out today are squarely on the sort of left populist side of the Democratic spectrum, which runs the risk of alienating some of those more centrist voters, maybe the Nikki Haley voter who'd like to see a little bit more about small government and deregulation, which she is talking about a little bit in the housing space. So there is the potential to be alienating. And I think more than that, though, and Trump has pointed this out many times, every time she says, here's a problem that I want to solve, she opens herself up to the criticism of why this administration hasn't solved it already, because she's been in that White House for these past 3.5 years. So if she had all these brilliant ideas to bring down prices, for example, they could have hypothetically been doing it.
Eugene, what about that? It's a great point.
Well, she was vice president. I think she's going to just sort of push ahead, right? These are my proposals. And I don't think she's going to want to get into a debate about the level of influence or, that she had over Biden-era policies. Yeah. I think she's going to try to turn a page.
And walk a fine line, likely. I just want to play some comments that are getting some attention. Last night, Mike, from former President Trump, get everyone's reaction on the other side.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman.
Mike, your reaction to this, those types of comments would be damaging to any other politician.
Right.
Do they start to have any impact around the edges for Trump or no?
There are other comments that maybe we can talk. I don't think those particular comments are really what. Both of the awards are incredibly prestigious, and we should honor anyone who's received either one of those. I get where he was going with it, and I think most people, when they hear that, they get where he was going with that. And so we bring it out, and it's a nice clip and all of that, but I don't think it's going to cause any damage.
But Molly,
where was he going?
that you can be healthy and get this award, I think is where he was going, as opposed to someone who gets the Medal of Honor, who has done something on a battlefield which you are under duress and under active harm.
And yet, Molly, online, there was furious reaction, and some veterans said they were offended.
Well, look, every time, this is why you have this chorus of Trump advisors saying they wish that he would be more disciplined and focus on the policies, because every time Trump makes a comment like this, he reminds voters of what they don't like about him. You know, you look at the polls and it's quite consistent. The things that people have misgivings about, who are on the fence about who to vote for, it's Trump's temperament, it's his erraticness, it's his personal attacks on people. So whenever he is going off script and arguably insulting veterans, heroes like this, it reminds people of why they have a little bit of pause about whether they can vote for him, even if they do support his policies in many cases.
Mike.
Well, I was just going to say he would be. I agree with you in that in this aspect. He would be much better served about talking about the Biden-Harris record. He would be much better served talking about immigration, the economy, inflation, international crises. He'd be much better served showing all of these areas in which this administration, of which he's vice president, has failed the American people. Yeah. You're absolutely right about that. And unfortunately, these are the clips, because they're easy to pull, that get the attention.
Because
and
he's
got to be, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is where the campaign,
because he said it.
Nobody would pull it.
But he's also trying to get attention. I mean, we've had 26 days
sure.
of Vice President Harris not doing a single interview. She has been going from happy rally to happy rally, and she's going to have 4 days of love in Chicago, another happy rally.
And he's trying to break into
the news cycle. And at the end of that, and he's trying desperately to break in. Yeah. And then sometimes, in order to break into it, this is catnip, if I'm going to use a Vance pun here. This is catnip for the media. And that's where we're going.
You know, I kind of agree with you to the extent that I think any one of these, like the, Miriam Adelson one, has a kind of temporary effect. I don't think it has a huge effect. I think maybe they do add up over time, and the hits keep coming.
Yeah. All right. Well, we shall see. Thank you for a great Friday conversation. Appreciate it, Molly, Eugene, and Michael. We really appreciate it. And before we go to break, an historic moment in the Oval Office today we want to share with you as President Biden signed a proclamation designating the site of the 1908 race riots in Springfield, Illinois, a national monument. President Biden was joined by civil rights leaders on the 116th anniversary of that violent two-day riot when a white mob rioted in a black neighborhood under false pretenses of seeking what they said was justice against two black men who were jailed for alleged crimes against white accusers. The mob assaulted black residents, looted and burned businesses and homes, and lynched and murdered two men. The violence exemplified that the country's racial problems were not confined to the South, and 6 months later led to the creation of the NAACP. By signing the proclamation, President Biden said, quote, "We remind ourselves we have no safe harbor unless we continue to remind people what happened." Here's a little bit more of what he had to say.
It's important that everybody walk by this area and know what happened here, because it can happen again if we don't take care of ourselves and fight for this democracy.
Welcome back. We have new developments in those delicate negotiations in Doha as mediators look to secure a ceasefire and hostage release deal between Israel and Hamas. Those talks that began yesterday have now concluded, with further negotiations expected to be held in Cairo next week. In a joint statement, the U.S., Egypt, and Qatar say the latest proposal on the table narrows the gaps between Israel and Hamas and builds on the framework outlined by President Biden back in May. The State Department announced Secretary Blinken will travel to Israel tomorrow to further those diplomatic discussions. At the White House today, President Biden struck a somewhat optimistic yet cautious tone about getting a deal done.
We are closer than we've ever been. I don't want to jinx anything, but as my grandfather said, with the grace of God, good little neighbors, a lot of luck, we may have something. But we're not there yet. But it's much, much closer than it was 3 days ago. So keep your fingers crossed.
Joining me now is Aaron David Miller, former senior advisor at the State Department for Arab-Israeli negotiations, now a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Help us to cut through kind of the noise of what we heard from President Biden, that joint statement, which basically says that the talks narrowed the gaps between Israel and Hamas. How much do you read into what we're hearing?
Thanks for having me, Kristen. I've had a fair amount of experience in dealing with Arab-Israeli negotiations, and I've repeatedly said that they only have two speeds, slow and slow. At the same time, I think that the president is right. We are closer than ever. But ever could still prove to be extremely complicated because it comes down to one fundamental question in the minds of two leaders. Yahya Sinwar, who's ensconced in some tunnel somewhere, below Khan Yunis or Rafah, surrounded by hostages, and Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. Do they have the urgency and the desire to close? The language and the concepts and the details will follow if, in fact, that urgency is there. And we may have reached the point where there is more pressure now on both to come to an agreement. But let me be very clear. It's a three-phase deal. I'm thinking if they sign up to this, you're only going to get through phase one. Limited exchange of hostages for an asymmetrical number of Palestinian prisoners. I've heard the ratio is 50-1. And the most important feature is a 6-week ceasefire that could begin to deliver the kinds of humanitarian assistance and security that 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza have been denied for months now. But to go beyond that, to talk about a cessation of the war and the release of all hostages, I don't think we're there.
Well, look, one of the features of this latest round of talks is that Hamas was not at the table. Do you anticipate that Hamas will send a representative next week for the talks? And what would that indicate to you?
Well, you know, because there may be a distinction without a difference, because the key Palestinian decision maker, Yahya Sinwar, has never been at the table. And I think Doha is Qatar is the capital in where the external leadership resides. So I suspect they were there. They aren't fully participating. They're being briefed, it seems to me. They were briefed. And they've already, if you believe some of the statements, rejected what the U.S. has put on the table. I suspect that could change. And again, I'll take a flyer here and do something I really don't like to do. I think there's more than a reasonable chance that by the end of August, you can see an agreement on phase one.
That would be significant, and it is significant to hear that coming from you. I want to get your reaction on some developments that we're tracking in the West Bank. The far-right finance minister announced plans for new Israeli settlements there. We saw another incident of settler violence overnight. How concerned do you believe the international community is and should be about the situation right now in the West Bank?
Well, the international community was actually prepared to do something about it. It might be relevant, but the reality, I think, is this: you've got the most extreme government in the history of the state of Israel, and two ministers who have big dreams, a lot of budgets, and big authority. And what's been happening in the course of the last year plus, the Israeli government was inaugurated, I believe, in December of 2022. We're coming up on 2 years now. Is that these two ministers are rearranging the relationship between Israel and the West Bank. And they are laying the groundwork for annexation in everything but name. They're contracting the amount of territory that Palestinians have access to and expanding those areas for Israeli settlements and Israeli settler activity, and acquiescing in a degree of settler violence that I think is unprecedented, at least in the modern history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So that West Bank problem, even if you got a ceasefire in Gaza, and even if you had security and stability in Gaza, the West Bank issue is going to loom large as a huge obstacle to creating a better pathway for Israelis and Palestinians in the months and years ahead.
All right, Aaron David Miller, thank you so much as we continue to track these incredible developments and talks that will resume next week. We really appreciate your perspective.
Thanks for having me.
Up next, a new way to protect election workers this November, plus a deep dive into the top issues for young voters in critical swing states. Stay with us. You're watching Meet the Press Now. Welcome back. As officials grapple with how to ensure the results of November's election, they're legitimate and accepted by both parties. They're also facing concerns over how to protect the workers who will be overseeing the entire process. Nearly 40% of local election workers surveyed earlier this year reported facing threats or abuse. That's according to the Brennan Center for Justice. And now in battleground Georgia, local election officials in one Atlanta area county will be equipped with panic buttons to combat rising threats. Jane Tim is a senior reporter for NBC News who covers election policy and voting rights, and she joins me now. Jane, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your incredible reporting with us. So explain why these panic buttons are needed. How do they work?
So the idea is that all of these election workers, many of them face significant abuse and threats, and they want a way to be able to escalate a situation in an emergency. So the badges are very similar to the size of a credit card. They look a lot like the badges that we carry around here at NBC. And you hit a button on them, just tap it, and it will alert either election officials, like your superiors, if you're a poll worker, or go directly to law enforcement, depending on how they're programmed. And this is sort of a low attention way to escalate a situation, with the idea that maybe picking up a phone and calling 911 could escalate a situation and make it more dangerous for election workers or other voters in a polling site. The idea being to be able to be quick access to law enforcement in an emergency.
What type of emergency are they potentially anticipating? What type of circumstance would this be used in, Jane?
You know, a lot of counties have been implementing de-escalation trainings to deal with sort of an upset voter or someone who is angry and believes maybe the election was stolen or has a problem with their own registration and their own ability to vote. But of course, the worry is things like guns in polling sites, or somebody who is just so upset that they may threaten physical harm on an election worker. These are the things that election workers worry about every day.
Jane Tim, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your reporting there. Truly fascinating. I want to turn now back to the critical question of what is motivating people to vote. NBC News got an exclusive first look at a poll showing what matters most to young voters in the battleground states: inflation, the economy, abortion, and health care, the top of the list. And while climate change is tied at number 5, many young voters say the climate issue is top of mind for them. NBC News national climate reporter Chase Kane has more.
Climate change has become a deal-breaker issue for many young Americans. 40% of voters under 35 say they will only vote for a candidate who prioritizes climate action, something young voters have been saying since the last election.
I personally am very moderate. I don't consider myself a Democrat or Republican, but I am here because climate change is the most important priority.
I want a livable future. I want green jobs. I currently go to George Washington University, and I'm worried about the job future.
This new poll, conducted by a Democratic polling firm of registered voters in 5 swing states, showed that across the political spectrum, supermajorities of young voters demand or at least prefer candidates who prioritize climate change.
Yeah, there is enough voter support, not just among Democrats, but also among Republicans, to force politicians to lead on climate. And not out of the goodness of their hearts, but because it will become the easiest way for them to win elections. But the burden is upon us as voters first, because if we don't show up, there's no reason for politicians to appeal to our priorities.
And that's the goal of the nonpartisan Environmental Voter Project. Don't change anyone's mind, just try to get young, climate-motivated Americans to vote.
And that impact could be huge. Tufts University projects that Gen Z and millennials will have a combined 104 million eligible voters this fall.
Being able to say, hey, we are going to win over and try to appeal to voters who care about climate, that does matter. It might not be the number one issue. It might not be number 3 or number 4, but in our close and polarized elections that we end up having, every demographic ends up mattering.
One influential climate action group, the Sunrise Movement, frequently organizes protests to communicate that jobs, inflation, and climate change aren't actually separate issues.
Young people want action, so it's beyond a party, and that is why we want to make sure that both nominees know and hear from us and hear our demands.
I would love to see a bill that really puts forward how tackling climate change can decrease our cost of living and improve our lives. I think that includes housing, education, and jobs first and foremost. Those are really key costs right now, and also ways that we can improve people's lives.
The survey also asked voters which issues will actually get them to the polls this fall. And when they made that distinction, climate change rose above economic issues, with 78% saying climate is motivating them to vote. In Los Angeles, I'm national climate reporter Chase Kane.
Just fascinating. Chase Kane, thank you for that. We appreciate it. We'll be back Monday with a very special edition of Meet the Press Now, live from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, kicking off our special NBC News special coverage of the convention that will go all night long. And if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press on your local NBC News station. I'll have exclusive interviews with Senators Chuck Schumer and Lindsey Graham, plus Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan. The news continues with Yasmin Vesuvian in for Hallie Jackson right now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.